welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Erica and I make videos all about making and selling candles. If you're interested in checking out what my Etsy shop looks like, or if you want to see any of my merch designs, they will be in the first link in the description box below. Today's video is going to be me explaining how I make one of my candles. So I want to just give a full detailed explanation about everything that I do, including the wax, the jars, pour temperature, how slow or fast I pour, the distance between the two wicks. Everything is going to be in today's video, so it's going to be very detailed on how I make one of my candles. First things first, we're going to be talking about the jar that I use. So this is a 13.5 ounce matte black Cali jar. I get it from California Candle Supply, but they're always sold out. So I need to start diversifying the jars that I use. But this is a 13.5 ounce jar. 13.5 ounces just tells you the liquid volume that can fit inside of this container. Now, when you're making candles, everything is in weight. So the liquid volume doesn't necessarily come into play when you are making candles because you're not going to be using that number to find your calculations. You're going to need to find out the fill weight, which is essentially the weight of wax that can comfortably fit inside of this container. So if you're looking to leave maybe a ½ inch away from the rim and fill all of this up with wax, then you're gonna need to figure out exactly how to do that. So there's two ways that I recommend to figure out how to do that. One is look on the website where you purchased it from. Sometimes they give you a fill weight, which is amazing. That has saved me so much, and you can kind of play around with that if you want to add a little bit more or a little bit less to it. But if you are finding a glass container that is not necessarily coming from a candle supplier and they're not telling you what the fill weight is, you can do this. So you will need to get a scale. If you are making candles, you must get a scale. This is mandatory. This is not optional. You have to get a scale when you are making candles. So this is a kitchen scale. You can use a shipping scale. Both will work fine when you're weighing heavier items like the wax weight. So what you're gonna do is you're going to take your empty jar and you're gonna put it on a scale. You're gonna tare it, which is essentially wiping it down to 0. And now anything that you put inside the jar, it's going to measure the weight of that. So then you're going to be taking your wax. I have my Presto pot here with wax. And then you would pour it into your container and stop it at the level that you want the wax to sit at. So wherever you want that fill line to be, that's where you would stop, and then you would read the scale and see how much wax weight can fit inside of the container. Now, I will warn you guys, as I have seen a lot of people try to use water when it comes to trying to get that weight calculation, and it's not gonna work because water actually weighs more than wax, so you're going to get an inaccurate result if you try to use water. I believe Jeff Stanley does have a video on how to calculate the water weight into wax weight, and I'll try to link that below if you guys are interested in checking that out, if you'd rather use water and just do math to convert it. But I recommend just take some wax. You don't have to put fragrance oil in it. Just take some liquid wax, pour it in. You can always, when you're done, just pour it back into the pitcher or the Presto pot or whatever you're using, and that way you can get the most accurate result possible. So next thing I do, or basically the first thing I do before I make candles, is I clean everything. So everybody always asks, you know, can I use soap and water? Can I just wipe it down with a microfiber cloth? Whatever you want to do is totally fine, as long as you're kind of getting those little dust particles out of there. But for me, I just find that taking a cotton ball and some rubbing alcohol at the bottom and the sides gets it clean enough to my liking. And the main reason why I clean it off with alcohol is just to make sure that the wicks will stick to the bottom. So the next thing that I do to prep my jars before I actually pour my candle is I'm going to adhere my wicks to the bottom of the jar. So for this jar, I actually chose to use 2 wicks. Now, I know that a lot of people do use 1 wick with this jar, but the diameter is actually 3¼ inches. And I was told that if a jar has a diameter over 3 inches to double wick it, and it saved my entire candle making experience switching to 2 wicks. They burn beautifully in this jar. So now I'm just going to take these wick stickers, and these are the choice that I made to adhere my wicks to the bottom of the container. I know a lot of people do use hot glue, or they use the red RTV, and I just prefer these. I feel like they work really well, and especially with wiping it down with alcohol first. They're easy to remove if you ever need to reuse the jar, but they're strong enough to hold down for the safety and the life of the candle. So now when I'm placing the wicks, what I do is I take a pen and I'm kind of guiding it down to where I want to put it in the jar. So I'm hoping you guys will be able to see what I'm doing, but essentially what I'm doing is trying to get these two wicks close together in the middle and about an inch or a little less than an inch apart when they're sticking out from the top. So I'm trying to do this in a way where you guys will be able to see. Or I'm not going to be looking at the camera while I do this. So I'm just guiding it down, and I'm trying to go more in the middle, but still leaving enough room on the side for the other wick. So that is the first placement. And I did have a lot of people asking me, they were kind of confused on why I was going more in the middle and closer together. And that's just the way that I learned to do it, and it's worked so far. The guys had told me not to keep the wicks too close to the edges of the jar to prevent it from overheating. So we're going to get this down. And I want them, so that's pretty much how I would put those. That's actually exactly, I'm glad I did this right. So that's actually exactly how I would do it. So they're just about touching, but they have a tiny little gap, and they have a good distance apart from all the sides. And then that way, when I put the cotter pin on, and actually I'll show you guys that right now since we're at this angle. This is the cotter pin. This is what I use to be able to hold the wicks in place. And what I do is grab these and I pull it through, and I'm pulling up on the wicks and pushing it over, and I'm just trying to tighten them up, because sometimes when you use these cotter pins so much, they tend to kind of stretch out. They're not as tight as they were when you first get them. And just kind of moving them around. I look down to see how it looks from all angles to make sure that it's as even in the middle as possible. So now we're done prepping the jars with the wicks and the cotter pin to hold it in place. I know that a lot of people choose to secure the wicks after they've already poured the wax. I like to secure it before. I feel like it's cleaner and less messy, and the wax doesn't get all over the wicks. I just prefer to do it that way. So now that is all set up, so I'm going to put it off to the side, and I'm going to be showing you guys the formula that I use to make one candle. So I made an entire video on the formula that I use to make one candle, but I'm just going to share with you guys the exact numbers that I use for my candles. So the formula, if you guys are not familiar with it, is you're going to be taking the fill weight for your jar, and you're going to divide that by 100% plus whatever fragrance oil load you want to use. So 7%, 8%, 10%, 12%. You choose what it is based on the wax that you're using. It's not a random number that you pick. I know a lot of people are confused on where we get those numbers. When you guys order wax from your supplier, usually they give you instructions and they give you the fragrance load range. So a lot of times it's between 6 to 10%, sometimes 8 to 12%, and you guys just choose whatever percentage you want to work with and see if you need to raise the fragrance oil number or take some down if the fragrance oil is too strong. It just really just depends, and it's nothing somebody can tell you. It's just based on the wax that you're using. So this is what I go by, and that will give you the wax weight needed. And then from there, you will just take the fill weight, subtract this number, and that will give you the fragrance oil weight you need. So these are my numbers. So for my jar, these are all in grams, by the way, not ounces. So for my jar, it is 270 grams will fit in my jar comfortably at the spot that I want it at. So what I do is I would divide that by 110%. So I take 100%, I add 10% fragrance oil load that I want to use, and that gives me 245 grams. Now it did give me a decimal, but I decided to round down and add a little bit more fragrance oil. So this is actually a fragrance load of 10.2% and not exactly 10%. And then what I would do is I would subtract the 245, which is the wax weight, and I would subtract that from the entire fill weight to get 25 grams. So now I know that it's 25 grams of fragrance oil I will be using and 245 grams of wax that I will be using. Now we're ready to measure out the wax weight. So what I have here is, this is my Presto pot, and I'm gonna take the camera closer so you guys can see, but I'm gonna show you what it looks like on the dial and what temperature it's at. So this is what it looks like on the Presto pot. So it's almost at, it's on the M basically of warm. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you what temperature it's at. So up until about an hour ago, I had never used this before, and this is the infrared thermometer, like the laser thermometer. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna get a temperature of the wax. So it's at 202 degrees. So I like to make this hotter than what I want to pour the fragrance oil at, because as I transfer the wax from the ladle to the pitcher, it's gonna go down in temperature. So what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna get my scale out. Hopefully you guys can see everything that I'm doing. And what I'm gonna do is, sometimes I will heat this up on a hot plate, but I decided to make the wax a little bit hotter to kind of prepare for the temperature drop that we're gonna get. So we're gonna put that right there, and then I need to change it to grams. So now we're on grams. I'm gonna put that on the scale, and we're gonna tare it. So we are looking for 245 grams. And what I like to do, instead of holding this over the pitcher and kind of waiting for it to drip, is I'll just take it and I'll scoop it right away into the pitcher. And that makes it so much quicker than how I used to do it. Okay, cool. So we're at 255 grams. So all I need to do is just take a little bit out. And yes, my pitcher has remnants of wax on it. Sometimes I don't clean it out very well. So we're gonna just get this to 245. There it is. Okay, 245, and now we're gonna do a temperature check to see how much it dropped. Okay, 192, let's see how fast it drops actually. Never checked this before. 194, 193. Okay, perfect. So that means that by the time it gets down to 180, 185, I will probably have my fragrance oil already poured. So this is a gram scale. I highly recommend you guys have 2 scales, because if you guys try to measure out your fragrance oil with that scale, it's not gonna work. So we're gonna be using Beechwood by the Flaming Candle. And I'm gonna put my little Dixie cup on. It's just a little paper cup that you can toss out when you're done using it. It is lined so that it's not going to leak. I've had that happen before. So we're gonna tare this, and we are going to pour out 25 grams. So I've done this, I mean, so many times that I kind of have an estimate of where 25 grams is, so that's 23.8. Okay, that's fine with me. There's gonna be a tiny bit that's gonna evaporate into the paper. So now actually I wanna check and see what the temperature is at. What is that? 181, oh, 179, 181. Okay, 179, 180. Let's go ahead and pour in the fragrance oil. I've been trying to add my fragrance oil hotter than what I usually do. I used to add it at like 160. I've definitely been trying to add it more at 180, 185. So this part of the video got a little bit too loud, but basically I just went ahead and mixed up the fragrance oil with the wax for about a minute. And then before I poured the wax, I checked the temperature and it was at about 152 degrees, which was a lot cooler than I was expecting. So I'm really glad I checked the temperature. So I poured at this open area right here, and a lot of people were wondering how fast or slow I pour. So you can kind of see, I'm not pouring super slow. And I don't feel like I'm pouring fast. I'm just kind of pouring pretty even. Make sure I get all of that out. There we go. And then from there, all I use is just paper towels to wipe it down. I like to make sure that the pitcher is really hot, so if I need to, I'll heat it up on a double boiler afterwards just to heat up the rest of the wax, which is probably what I should have done before I started this video, but is what it is. I'm definitely not perfect when I make candles. I a lot of times will leave some residue in there for the next candle. I've never had an issue with it in terms of contaminating scents. Eventually I will want to get multiple pitchers for different scents so that if I am working with 2 different scents, if they're in the same scent category, so if they're both floral or if they're both fruity, at least they're in the same scent category if there is some contamination. But I think that is everything that I wanted to tell you guys and show you guys when it came to making my candles. I actually found it really interesting to have the laser thermometer ready because if you guys have ever worked with the dial thermometers, you guys know that those take a little while to get up to speed when it comes to checking the temperature, and temperature can drop really fast. So I found it actually really interesting to see what the temperatures were because, to be honest, after I pour the wax into my pitcher, I don't usually check the temperature. So that was really interesting to see. But I really hoped you guys enjoyed today's video. I actually had a request to make today's video and I thought it made a really good video idea considering that every time I've made make candles with me videos, it's kind of from afar and you guys aren't really seeing the little details. So I want to make sure that I could include all of the little details in today's video to try to show you guys exactly what I do kind of from my perspective. If you guys like today's video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up as well as subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And don't forget to follow me over on Instagram at MemoryBoxCandleCo. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye guys.